I want to talk about battle ratings. I think we can all agree that War Thunder's BR system is broken. And frankly, it's been broken for quite a while now, and what's more, Gaijin seems to understand this fact, because they've been desperately trying to work around it for years. Back in 2021, they added stock air-to-air missiles to high-tier jets across the board. Then, in 2024, they completely split battle ratings for aircraft between air and ground RB game modes. And more recently, we've been seeing quite a lot of what I'll call upgrade packages being added to top tiers in both air and ground. These are new vehicles whose only main difference from the previous one is more or less just a single component upgrade. And sometimes these are literally upgrade packages in real life, treated as entire separate vehicles for the purposes of War Thunder. Think the Typhoon Aisa or the M1A2 Trophy. Now, the more cynical among you might just chalk this up to a cash grab by forcing players to spend more time grinding, and while I'm sure that's true to some extent, I don't actually think that's the crux of the issue. Instead, I believe that the fundamental cause connecting all of these seemingly unrelated changes is actually Gaijin's stubborn insistence on relying on a matchmaking system that has long since become obsolete. And in this video, I'm going to propose a way to fix that. I call it Loadout-Adjusted Battle Ratings, or LABR for short. The premise is very simple. Instead of each vehicle having one static battle rating, its total battle rating should instead be calculated according to what upgrades it has access to. I'll break this down into two versions in order of how much effort they would be to actually put into the game, and therefore how unrealistic it would be for Gaijin to actually consider implementing. For version 1, we'll start simple with just aircraft. So imagine this. There's an extra panel on the secondary weapons management screen that shows a checklist of all the individual types of ordnance that you have unlocked. Beside each type of ordnance is what I'll call its adjusted battle rating. Ticking the box sets your vehicle's battle rating to this adjusted battle rating, and then allows you to select loadouts using this particular type of ordnance in live matches. These adjusted battle ratings would also be different depending on if you're queuing for air or ground modes, of course. So for example, if you take guided bombs in air RB, that probably won't raise your BR, but taking them in ground RB would kick it up a notch or two. If multiple boxes are ticked, the highest battle rating is the one that gets applied. So for a concrete example, let's take the F-16A ADF. It recently got access to AIM 120 AMRAAMs and had its BR moved up from 12.7 to 13.3. Now, a lot of folks actually didn't like this change because it fundamentally changed the matchmaking and playstyle of this plane. Before the change, it had access to 2 Sparrows and 4 Sidewinders on a very nimble airframe, which gave it a rather unique spot in the overall meta. And now it's kind of just another F-16 with AMRAAMs, except a bit worse because it doesn't get many countermeasures or an HMD. With loadout-adjusted battle ratings, you can have both. If you want the old Fox 1 style of gameplay and matchmaker, you can select just the AIM-9L and AIM-7M. That would put your BR back at 12.7, where it used to be. If you want to sling some Fox 3s, then you can select the AIM-120, which would put your BR at 13.3. You could even just take the Sidewinders and lower your BR all the way down to 12.3, just like the F-16A before it in the tree, which also only gets Sidewinders. Taken together, I think this system would make a lot more sense than just having one static battle rating for a plane whose capabilities are so dependent on its ordnance. Version 2 would be integrating these adjusted BRs directly into the upgrade module system. The implementation is still relatively simple, and this also cleanly expands the adjusted battle ratings to include tanks and ships. So instead of having that checklist in the secondary weapon screen, each upgrade module itself can have an associated battle rating, and you can use the existing system for installing and uninstalling modules to select which ones you want to apply and have access to. This would have the nice side effect of actually giving a purpose for uninstalling researched modules, beyond just reducing your repair cost or trying to turn the Vulcan into a shotgun. Additionally, this means things like tank ammunition types or fuel upgrades in superprops could also adjust the vehicle's battle rating. How far you'd actually want to take this is a bit open-ended, because in theory you could even have things like radiators and airframe change the battle rating of your aircraft, but personally I feel like only adjusting battle ratings for ammunition, ordnance, and maybe any especially powerful engine injection or fuel upgrades is probably the sweet spot. In any case, having battle ratings be directly based on upgrade modules like this would also provide a clean way to resolve some of the high-tier silliness like the Typhoon Aisa, where the new vehicle is literally just a single module upgrade over the old one. Intuitively, a less awkward solution in this case already exists. We could just have the Aisa radar as an upgrade module and have it be hot swappable in the existing upgrades UI, like swapping out the MG151 for an MK108 on late model BF109s. However, with the current BR system, this would mean that the Aisa variant would have to have the same BR as the mechanical radar variant. But because the Aisa radar is such a massive improvement in both situational awareness and weapon management, it does deserve a BR bump. With Loadout-Adjusted Battle Ratings, each upgrade module can have its own associated battle rating, so suddenly this is totally feasible. Same thing with the trophy APS on the Abrams, or the double AMRAAM pylons on the F-15C Golden Eagle. Now, I will say that I am unconvinced that Gaijin will actually consider this particular suggestion, simply because it is a straight reduction in the top tier grind, but let me dream a little. Okay, so that's my pitch for Loadout-Adjusted Battle Ratings, a new way of implementing battle ratings in War Thunder that attempts to address the shortcomings of the current system. So now let's take a step back and have a look at the specific benefits and drawbacks of LABR when compared to the existing BR system. One drawback is that LABR would be much more difficult to set using player statistics, simply because there will be too many possible combinations to reliably get representative data for all of the possible loadouts. Now, I don't actually see this as much of a problem, because I think the current method of setting BRs using game stats is rife with statistical biases in the first place. As a super basic example, popular vehicles and nations have more low-skill players playing them, so their battle ratings get disproportionately reduced, while unpopular vehicles with practically identical stats that only get played by veterans end up having inflated battle ratings that don't reflect any actual advantage in capability. So, being forced to hand tweak some BRs is probably a net benefit for gameplay balance. But that does bring up the second downside, which is that implementing individual battle ratings for every type of ordnance would just be a lot of work for the developers. On this front, one quick way to get started would be to just set default BR modifiers for all ordnance types across the board, and then tweak individual cases where necessary. For example, the Derby might be worth a 1.0 BR bump by default, but in the specific case of the M346FA, it would be something like a +4 BR bump, because that plane without those missiles is basically just a Yak 130. Now, implementation details aside, the only actual downside to the players that I can think of is that having battle ratings determined by loadout like this would make estimating the capabilities of any given opponent a bit harder, since in an up tier, for example, it might be tricky to determine if an F-16 has Fox 3s or not. However, this is already kind of the case since stock grinding players do exist, so I don't think this would make too much of a difference in practice. The benefits, on the other hand, are potentially huge. I wouldn't be making this video if I didn't think so. I see LABR as a clear improvement over the existing BR system in two key ways. Number one, it directly addresses the issue of variety in high-tier aircraft. Aircraft of 3rd generation and above are largely defined by their weaponry rather than their flight performance, especially in the current missile spamming meta of ARB. As such, with LABR, you can have a single airframe filling multiple niches in the meta simply by equipping or unequipping various types of missiles to gain access to different BR brackets. Again, think of the F-16 ADF with and without AMRAAMs. Closely related, number two, LABR would substantially reduce the pain of stock grinding across the board, because your stock vehicle will have a more forgiving matchmaker than the same vehicle once you unlock all the key upgrades and ordnance options. Note that this would not remove players' incentive to actually grind out the upgrades. Rather, it would change the incentive structure from one that is negative, driven by frustration, to one that is positive, driven by motivation, driven by the desire to unlock new modes of play. There would be a real feeling of progression while upgrading your vehicle, because you progressively get access to tougher matchmaking while your own capabilities improve in step to help you meet the challenge. In this way, loadout-adjusted battle ratings would be a relatively low-effort way to effectively multiply the amount of content in War Thunder without Gaijin needing to invest in any new models or maps or gameplay modes. And that is good for everyone, including Gaijin. Alright, that's my piece. This is a video that I've been wanting to make for years at this point, and I'm certainly not the only one with this idea that weapons should affect vehicle battle ratings. However, I haven't seen anyone actually break down how an implementation would actually work, so this is just my attempt. Let me know what you think of loadout-adjusted battle ratings as a concept. Does my reasoning resonate with you? Do you agree with my implementation? Do you maybe have alternative suggestions for how to improve matchmaking? Leave a comment. I want to hear all of it. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and good luck out there.